you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Shoot, I thought I was going to get to introduce myself. I was going to say, and so our next speaker is a really great guy. You're really going to love him. It's me. But thank you, Rich, for doing that great introduction. Before I get into leadership, and I'm going to share some ideas with you on leadership today that I would share with the biggest companies in the world. But I think the great thing about what these big companies do is they put a tremendous amount of money into studying leadership and training on leadership, and they create some phenomenal ideas that don't just work in big companies. They work for any size company. They don't even, as a matter of fact, how many of you are leaders in here? Leaders? Okay. Anyone not a leader in here? Not a leader? Okay. So you all know that you're leaders, whether you have you as your company or you have a staff of 30 or 40 or 50. And what you're learning in this business is how to create virtual teams. So even though you may not have employees, you still are a leader, and your virtual teams need leadership. So we're going to focus on that in just a minute. But before we do, I do want to show a little video for you, and it's not necessarily on leadership, but I think it's appropriate to take just a minute and show this video right now. And it's a really cool video. I saw it, I can't remember when. I think it was maybe 6 months ago. And someone had sent me a link to this video, and I write a leadership newsletter which has all sorts of principles, but I like to mix in just some inspiring things too. And so I wrote an article about this particular video. And I want to share it with you because I think it really relates so well to this program. It's never too late to change your life or for a new beginning. And this particular video, some of you might have seen, but it's so inspiring. I want to share it with you. It's about a gentleman, I don't know exactly how old he is, but he looks like he's probably at least in his late 30s, maybe in his 40s. He's a guy who talks about in the video, even says, he never had much confidence. I saw other interviews with him where he said, he was bullied when he was in school. He was the oddball. He was the different one. He was the one that no one thought would be successful. And what he did, what his passion was singing. And he didn't really see a future in that, so he went the traditional business route, and he got a job as a cell phone salesperson. But in the back of his mind, he knew there was always something better out there for him, and he didn't know what it was. He thought maybe it might be his singing, but his type of singing that he liked was opera singing. And then an opportunity came, and we'll talk about that afterwards. An opportunity came, and he acted on that opportunity, and you're going to get to see what happened when he acted on that opportunity. So if we can cue the video, and then we'll come back and talk about it in just a minute.
By day, I sell mobile phones. My dream is to spend my life doing what I feel that I was born to do.
Paul, what are you here for today, Paul?
To sing opera. I've always wanted to sing as a career. Confidence has always been sort of like a difficult thing for me. I've always found it a little bit difficult to be completely confident in myself.
Okay, ready when you are.
of you have seen that clip before? And how many of you, when you saw it for the first time, and maybe even this time, it brought tears to your eyes? Yeah, I mean, I've seen it before, and I still have that feeling. Now, we're talking in this program, I'll be talking about leadership in just a minute, and with leadership, how can we get that level of performance out of people? How can we get that out of ourselves? But think about this guy, because we see the final product. Yeah, he's on this show, and he does this amazing opera. I don't even like opera, right? But I'm like, whoa! He does all these great things, but what went into creating that? See, we just see that little glimpse, but what went into creating that is the same thing you're learning about in your business. It's all those things that lead up to that, this life-changing event that's going to happen for all of you. Think about what happened to him. First of all, all those years where people were putting him down, what did he have to keep doing? What did he have to keep doing? He had to keep singing and thinking there's a chance for him, right? Instead of totally giving up on that career. What else did he have to do? He had to look for opportunities. And a lot of people, they see an advertisement for whatever that show was over in the UK, and they might have had that level of talent, but what do you think a lot of people probably did? Oh, no, right? I'm not good enough. It's probably, too many other people going to be there. And so this guy had to go through all those hoops, and we see that final product. And so now, what I want to talk to you guys about is leadership. How can we get our team members, our virtual team members, our employees to perform at the levels they're truly capable of? How can we get ourselves to perform at the level we're truly capable of? I remember I was getting ready to give a talk on leadership many years ago. I think this was probably 12, 13, 14 years ago. And I was talking to somebody on the phone, and he was a former POW in the Vietnam War. His name was Captain Gerald Coffey. He had been shot down. He spent 5 years in the Hanoi Hilton being tortured virtually every day. And I was just talking with him this conversation. He said, so what are you going to be talking about? Because I told him I had a presentation coming up. I said, I'm going to talk about leadership. And he said, what are you going to focus on when you talk about leadership? And I said, well, I'm going to focus on this and this. And I was trying to impress him. And he said, make sure you remember to tell them the most important thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, make sure you remember to tell them that the most important person they have to lead is themselves. And so my presentation, it's going to be somewhat about self-leadership, but it's also about leading teams. And as Rich mentioned, I have companies like Cisco and Merck and Disney and Microsoft and Wells Fargo and Centex Homes and Kuwait Oil Company and Kuwait Petroleum Company and all these companies that bring me in for leadership. And the interesting thing is that, sometimes if it's a public seminar and they're just sending people, I get organizations or leaders that are doing well, but usually when I'm called in to go into a division or an organization, it's because they're really struggling. They're frustrated. They're the bottom of the pack. And so it's working with that leadership team to turn it around. Now, hopefully none of you are in that situation. But let me just ask you a question. How many of you are a little bit frustrated with your business right now? Raise your hands. Yeah. And can you bring the house lights up more? Okay. So who's frustrated? I couldn't see out there. Frustrated? Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty normal, especially with entrepreneurs. How many would like to lessen your frustration? Take it down. Great. And that's what we're going to focus on, by the way, but let me just ask you another question. How many of you out there are a little bit cynical, like, oh yeah, right, in an hour and a half, we're going to learn how to do that? Raise your hands if you're cynical. Come on, cynics. And who out there is so cynical, you won't even raise your hand till you find out why I want to know? Right here. Thank you. Okay. So I do believe that what I'm going to share with you can change your business. I also know that many things I'm going to share with you, you've heard before. You might already be applying some of these things. That's okay. I think it still will be valuable for you to hear it again. One of the things that I wrote a book on was how to give a persuasive presentation. And so I wrote a whole book on how to design what you're going to say, how to get yourself in the right mental state, and then how to deliver it where you're impactful. And occasionally, I have other people that go out and teach that class all around the world, but I still like to go out and teach it. And you know, one of the reasons why I like to go out and teach it, and it's to small groups, it's like 12 people that I'll do it for, 14 people max, instead of speaking to 300 or 10,000. But I still like to go and teach those classes, because when I'm sharing those ideas on the 5 keys, for instance, to being a dynamic presenter, who else am I teaching? Hello? Yeah, I'm reminding myself. And so some of these may be reminders. But what I want to do first is I want to, and you guys have to participate. Are you guys going to play full out, participate? Yeah. All right, great. So what I'm going to do first is I want to talk about the 4 levels of leadership, and I'll put them up here. They're in your books too. But I want to ask you, lowest level of leadership, poor leadership. And I'm just estimating. I'm saying about 25% of people in leadership positions across the board do a really poor job, a lousy job. How many of you have experienced that? Who's seen that before? Yeah. So give me some examples of poor leadership. How did you know it was poor leadership? And you're going to have to yell it out.
Don't know where they're going.
So didn't know where they were going. The organization was going. Great.
Can't make a decision.
Can't make a decision. Perfect. Yes.
Didn't lead by example.
So they said, do this, do this, do this, and then what they do? The other thing, right? The opposite. Violated maybe a value. Great, yeah.
Not communicating their vision.
So not communicating the vision, which is a core principle of leadership. Poor leaders don't do that. But why don't poor leaders usually communicate the vision? They don't have one. Exactly, yeah. When the team wins, I did it. When the team fails, they did it. Yeah, exactly. Damn team. They're the worst team in the world. Yeah, over here?
Insecure.
Very insecure. Level of certainty and confidence very low. Yes?
Very low morale throughout the company.
So there was low morale throughout your company because of this leader. Okay, great. A couple people farther back, if you, yep.
Lack of control.
So lack of controls. There's people going off in all sorts of directions, no systems in place. Yep. Never shut up and let other people talk. They weren't very good listeners. And then one more, poor leadership. What's it look like? Yes? Great, so they're micromanagers. They're not giving their employees enough time to really be who they are, and they're not pushing power down so people can make decisions. Fantastic. Now, that's the worst level of leadership. And I know there's no poor leaders in this room, right? No one's at that level in this room, hopefully. But what's the next level up? The next level up is something called good leadership. And when I say the word good, what am I really saying? This is about 50% of all leaders out there. What's good leadership? Yeah, most people think good leadership is kind of what the average leader does. That's good. Good job. By the way, when you do a poor job as a leader, what are the rewards you get? How are you rewarded for doing a lousy job? Huh? A big raise? What company is that? Now, tell me later. All right. So, no. The rewards you get for doing a poor job in anything in your life, whether it's leadership or in your relationship or with your health or with your finances, you do a poor job, the rewards you get are pain, right? You're going to lose your job as a leader typically if you do a poor job. But how do good leaders get rewarded? The average mediocre leader, how do they get rewarded? What kind of rewards do they get? You know what they really get? They get poor rewards. Average equals poor rewards. And you got to remember that. And that if that alone is not enough incentive for you to break out of what everyone else is doing around leadership. Because what I'm going to get to, you're going to see, is we're not even going to talk about what excellent leaders do. I mean, some of what we're going to share is what they do. But what I want you guys focused in on, and it's kind of what you've been focused in on in every other aspect of this program. Like Rich didn't bring in the fifth best person on product launches, right? He brought in his opinion, the best, okay? And so what we want to do is we want to study the best leaders. How many of you have seen this level of leadership before? How many have seen outstanding leadership? Who's seen it? Who's experienced it? Tell me what it looks like. In your opinion, what's it look like? So it's motivational. Who the leader motivated you. Great. Energizing. It got results. Yeah, great, fantastic. Why? Pardon me? So trustworthy. There was congruency. You trusted what the person said. And they set up systems where they could trust you to do the role because you knew what it was. You had certain limitations you knew not to violate. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It's inspirational, it's contagious. So contagious meaning that everyone became a leader based on this leader. You know, I had an interesting conversation one time I was speaking, and I was talking about leadership, and this lady came up afterwards and she said, oh, I know what you're talking about with outstanding leadership. I was in a company, we had an outstanding leader. And I said, really? I said, tell me about this leader. She said, he was amazing. He took a company from, I can't remember what it was, 25 people to 3,000 people in 3 years, and it was so successful. I said, that's fantastic. That's really great. And how's that company doing now? She says, oh, you don't even want to hear it. It's terrible. I said, what happened? She said, well, he was such a great leader, but then what happened was he had an accident. He had, I think it was an auto accident, and he passed away. And because he was such a great leader, when he was gone, and he wasn't there anymore, the whole thing fell apart. Is that outstanding leadership? No. You know what, hey, I don't want to talk about someone who's not here, okay? But in my opinion, that's the opposite of what you're talking about, where you're creating leaders throughout the organization. Yeah, a couple more.
I believe an outstanding leader is a great mentor.
Outstanding leader is a great mentor. Fantastic. He's literally picking other people and lifting them up, and maybe even lifting them up above him. Yeah, great. Okay, one other. Yeah, way back there. If you can yell really loud. Very nice. So if you didn't hear what he said he takes accountability when things aren't going well, and when they do go well, he makes sure that his team really feels like they did the job. They say Ronald Reagan had something on his desk, and I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was that philosophy, that I take the responsibility and then I make sure I give credit to others when things go well. Okay, so we're going to focus on outstanding leadership. And what I've done, I normally, when I'm out speaking and doing this in a public seminar, it's like a 2-day course, and we do all sorts of exercises and demonstrations, and they're applying it to their business, and I have like an hour and a half. So what I did was I just said, if I were in your business, if you hired me to come in and we're looking at your business, what would be 10 things I would be looking for that would tell me where your business is going to be a year from now? And I'm not talking about the internet marketing components because I'm not an expert at that. I'm talking about from a leadership perspective, what would I look for in your business to see if you really were on track to build something phenomenal, something that is going to change your life, something that is going to create an incredible breakthrough for you. And I want to go through what those are. Okay? So, the first thing I do whenever I go into a business, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to be able to work in a lot of companies that have this, but the first thing I look for is, what's your culture like? And when you talk about culture, what does that mean? Culture really, to me, is defined by a couple things. It's defined, firstly, by your vision. What is your vision? How many of you have a vision for your organization? Okay? Now, Leadership 101 says that that's the first job of a leader. And so a lot of people, they create these visions, but how many have seen somebody's vision and you kind of look at it and it's just not very inspiring? How many have seen one like that before? Yeah, right? And there was an example of university. They went out and they hired a consultant, and they spent, this was a public university, they spent, I think it was either $1 million or $2 million of taxpayers' money bringing a consultant in, getting all their people together and coming up with, ta-da, 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 their vision. And this became a controversy because they took a lot of money to come up with a vision, right? So this newspaper, not newspaper, actually a television station, they came out and they were going to do an expose on this, $2 million spent on creating a vision. And so the head of the university is walking down the stairs and he comes out and they ambush him, right? And they said, is it true that you authorized spending $2 million of taxpayers' money on creating a vision statement for the university? And he said, you're darn right I did, and it's the best thing we've ever done, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat, and it's one of the best investments we could have made. And then the reporter asked a really important question. What's your vision statement? And guess what? He didn't know it. On TV, he stumbled, and so he didn't really have something that was truly inspiring him. He had something where he could check it off the list and say, I've got a vision statement. See, I think you need to look at your business, and in my opinion, you've got to create a vision statement that makes you, that makes everybody that you would attract to your business feel like they're part of something that's really special, world class. And in doing this, think big. I went into an organization about 4 years ago. It was an insurance agency. And they had just had some horrific things happen to their business where they had most of their agents had left. There was a rift between two partners. This company was left in a shambles. And the owner of the company that was still there had me come in and speak for the organization. And I remember afterwards, for the small part that was left, I remember afterwards, he called me into his office and he said, Tom, he said, I want to retain you. I want you to work with me. I like what you said in that meeting. I want to retain you. And I could see he was really struggling. He was hurt from this separation. And I remember talking to him and I said, if I do work with you, you can't see your organization anymore the way it was, and you definitely can't see it the way it is. The only way I'm going to work with you is if you're willing to look at your company and see how you can create some niche where you are absolutely the best in the world. I said, it's probably not going to be the biggest in sales, right? Because there's huge, massive insurance companies out there, too hard to compete in that way. I said, but you've got to find a way where you can start telling the story of who you are in a way that agents that don't know about you right now will want to come on board. In a way where good agents that you want to keep, that are still here, that might be thinking about leaving, will stay. And so what he did was he got together and they created a vision that every single time I go up there, he talks about that vision. And it's not like he's beating it into people that aren't inspired. People around him, it's phenomenal. The people that stayed changed. And then they saw a whole new set of people that came to them because they created this new culture. Now, vision is part of the culture. The other thing are your values. What do you stand for? See, if you go to an organization like a Cisco, and I actually have a Cisco badge, every single day you wear your little badge that gets you into the offices, and on the back of your name badge, which has your picture and that type thing on, right on the back of it is the vision. You literally carry the Cisco vision with you everywhere you go, right? And then you have another badge underneath that. And that badge has the Cisco values. What do we value? What are the guidelines for performance and action? And so at the very base of it, theirs, and I'll talk about this in a minute, is customer satisfaction. And they've been driving customer satisfaction longer than anyone I know, right? They've been fanatical about it, which we're going to talk about in a little while. But people know those values because they're right there, right? They're defined. And then on the back of that badge with the values, they have the organization's goals, which also define the culture. So the first thing I would look at in your business is, have you created a world-class culture, or do you just have a me too culture? Or do you just have a I'm trying to make some money culture, right? You've got to create something. If you want the best partners to be attracted to you, and you haven't had this phenomenal success so far. Did I just say sex? Right? My wife's not here. What am I thinking about? Okay. If you haven't had phenomenal success so far, and you want to attract these superstars helping you out and working with you, you got to have a great product, better have a great idea, but your organization, your team, you better have a culture that really wants, that makes them want to be part of the Super Bowl championship team, up-and-coming team, right? So that's the first thing I always look for. Now, what's a company that has, in your opinion, what's a company that has a really phenomenal culture that you can see is world-class? Maybe you've seen it the past day or two. What company? How many say Disney? Yeah. What do you do when you call, how many are staying here in the hotel? Most of you? Okay. And how many have had a wake-up call? You called in for a wake-up call, right? At the end of it, what do they always say? Have a magical evening, right? Now that's world-class, right? You don't hear that anywhere else. You don't go to the Sheraton and hear, have a magical evening, right? They probably say, don't bother us anymore. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to have that world-class Disney culture, even though we might only have ourselves. And we've got a virtual team. We want to start building that in our mind. That's what leaders do. They see the future. They build it in their mind first. You know, last night I had a really cool experience. I was on my way to one of the meetings or mixers or whatever they're called, and I'm walking outside by the pool, and there was a housekeeper from the hotel, and she was probably, 10, 15 yards in front of me, so I'm walking behind her. You could tell she was tired. She'd had a long day. It was, 7 o'clock, 7:30, 7:45, long day, right? And she's walking along, and I noticed up ahead, someone had left like a small towel, like a washcloth or something like that. And it was just out in the middle, right, and it was there. Now, most hotels that don't have a world-class culture, the housekeeper that's not on duty now, what's she going to do? Walk by it. And she didn't even know I was behind her, right? She was tired. You could just tell she was really, really tired. But what did she do? Because they have a world-class culture that demands performance and attracts people that will perform at that level. What do you think she did? She walked right past it. No, that'd be a crappy story, right? What did she do? She picked it up. And you know what? I saw that last night. Reminded me of when I worked with Disney many years ago. I think 10 years ago, I was working on a project with the Disney Institute, and I was partnered with Gladys Knight of Gladys Knight and the Pips. I was her little pip for this project, right? And what we were doing, what Gladys and I were doing, was we were working with Disney on a talent camp for kids. And Gladys obviously was going to provide the talent, coaching, and bring in all sorts of different artists that were going to coach these talented kids in a week over the summer at the Disney Institute. And then I was going to do the motivational part, the performance part. And I remember being with a Disney vice president, and we're walking along, it was just he and I, Gladys wasn't there, we're walking along this part of the Disney Institute, and we're in this conversation, right? And he's totally focused on me, he's paying attention, and then all of a sudden he says, excuse me one second, I apologize, hold that thought please, and he reaches down and he picks up this tiny piece of paper. I didn't even see it. And he didn't make a big deal. He didn't say, at Disney, we create a magical experience, and I'm picking up this piece of paper. All he does is he just says, excuse me. He picks it up, he puts it in his pocket, and we continue on with the conversation. See, but that comes from the culture. Because see, when you come into Disney, I don't know if you know this, some of you probably heard this, when you come into Disney, first thing you do, and it doesn't matter whether you're the vice president of Disney or you're going to be the street sweeper out at the park, you go through an orientation where you learn a lot of different roles at Disney. If you're a vice president, you go and you sweep the streets. They all have to go through that. You sweep the streets. You do the roles that other people do, so you start to really understand how you can bring world-class culture into every role. And then the thing about Disney is when you're with them, they're always talking their vision and they're living their values, okay? So the first thing I would look for in you, right, in your organizations, what is it? Yeah, an open book test. Look down in your books, and what's it say? What do I want to see? That you create what? World-class culture. Okay, that's number one. Now, second thing I look for, and this one, when I talk about it, sometimes I create controversy. Like when I go to overseas, right, where they're not really in tune with what this topic is about. You know, that I get people who sometimes get angry. So I'm not trying to offend anybody, but one of the things I believe, and I know this is a Disney philosophy, it's a Cisco philosophy, it was a Jack Welch philosophy. As a leader, as someone running a company, you're only as good as your team. You can know every leadership technique in the world, you can have it down, know exactly what to do, but if you've got, and we're going to talk about it, you know, there's A players, there's B players, there's C players, and then the lowest category I have is a D player. But if you've got a team filled with C's and D's, you could be a miracle worker, you're still going to struggle. Okay? How many of you believe in this philosophy? Yeah. And so part of leadership is yes, motivating people and mentoring and coaching, but part of it also is putting a little gate out front that only lets the right people into the culture you've created. And then once they get in, it's developing them and enabling them to increase their performance. And also, once certain people get in, and Jack Welch even said this, he said, you know, he followed this philosophy, and before he really became diligent about it in terms of hiring people or taking on a partner, JV partner, whatever it is, in his situation, he said he used to make mistake about 50% of the time. He'd get his relationships or his hires right about 50% of the time. He said once he really got diligent about it, he got it right about 75, 80% of the time, which means he still did what? He still made mistakes, but they were a lot fewer. And then when he made a mistake, he knew that if he could not develop that person into someone who could play at the level he needed to, then he needed to redeploy them. And this is a really critical factor in your business. So, and we say hire A players, if you're hiring an employee or for a project, you're hiring a copywriter. And I'm going to show you what an A player looks like in just a minute, but you got to make sure you got A players. Remember one of my clients, Pacificare, I remember being in a meeting of some of their top executives, and they just had this executive come over from Disney to Pacificare, which is a big, huge insurance company. And this lady stood in front of those executives, and she was like a Marine drill sergeant. She was like, I want to tell you that your career is being held in the hands of the people on your team. And when I come back here a year from now, there's one thing I want to make sure you do, and that is every single role that you have needs to be filled by an A player. Almost made me want to get down and do some push-ups, right? I mean, you know, she was tough, but she was inspiring, and it was true. You've got to hire A players, and you've got to develop A players within your organization. A lot of times you'll have an A player in one role, and then you give them a promotion, and are they necessarily an A player in this new role? Yes or no? Maybe they're a B. In a lot of organizations, what you're dealing with is not A players in every role. You've got your good corporate citizens. They're your B players. But the B players, we've got to figure out, how can I make that person an A? Because here's what I want you thinking about. Here's what an A player is. An A player is somebody that, based upon what you're paying for that role, whatever compensation plan you have for that role, and the results that you see being created in that role, an A player is somebody who, out of all the potential candidates that you could access for that role, an A player is someone who would be in the top 10%. You're selecting from the top 10% to fill a role, because you're not paying any more money for an A player, right? You're not, now, if you have a percentage compensation, you're not giving an A player a higher percentage. You might be paying more, but it's based on results, right? So we have to figure out how to develop A players. We have to figure out how to get the best possible people in each position. And if you look at this little chart that I've got here, the way I look at an A player is based on performance, partly. But what's the other element I have there? Can you guys see that? What's that say? Character. And what do you think character means? To me, character doesn't mean, oh yeah, she's a great lady. He's a wonderful guy. I mean, that's part of it. But what it really means is, how congruent are they with the culture we have in our organization? How congruent are they? So in other words, well, we'll look at different examples, but let's take a look at this. If you've got someone who's low on performance and low on character, the kind of person that no one really wants to work with, they piss off customers, they do those types of things. So low grade on character, low performance. What grade do you give that person? What are they? Come on, everybody, what are they? D. Now, what do you do with a D person? What do you do with a D player? What should be the first question going through your head when you look at a role and you go, I've got a D player? What should you be asking?
How fast can I get rid of him?
Okay, he had the right question. I like both those. One is, why is he still here, and how can I get rid of him? D players kill companies. And how many have had a D player that you've had to work with before? Yeah, it's depressing. And I know you want to be a good leader, and you've got a big heart, and I think I have a big heart. This is something I really struggled with, right? Because they're human beings, and you care about them, and you don't have to not care about someone. I think even in the way that you redeploy, you have to do it with respect, but you have to understand your company and the results that you're trying to achieve are too valuable to try and carry a D player. And to fix a D player, it's not like you just have to fix performance, right? You got to fix performance and actually fix their personality or their values. It's just too much work. You'll never accomplish that and be able to be an effective leader for you and the rest of your team. Now, go back to the chart. So that's one category. That's pretty easy. Now, how about this one? High performance, low character. How many have experienced someone like that before? Are they fun to work with? Huh? High maintenance? You always say no, but what?
They get stuff done.
No, but they get stuff done. And yeah, that we're saying performance, they are getting things done. And a lot of times what we do is we continue to carry someone like that because we're like, what a pain in the neck, right? I know everyone's ticked off and no one wants to work with this person, but they do get results. And I'll tell you, the great leaders I know, they don't tolerate that very long. Because they say, I can get someone else to get great results and be someone who, because I've got a world-class culture, I'm not limited to only having to sacrifice, for results by lowering my standards on character, they don't look at that as something that they're going to tolerate very long. And I don't care who it is. I mean, Jack Welch said, fire that person immediately. I go into Cisco, they train their people. When someone like that shows up, even though they're a valuable salesperson, they're making tons of money, ultimately that person is going to cost you, and they're going to cost you big, and you don't want to pay the cost. You don't want to have to pay the cost they're going to cost you. Now, we try and develop them. We try and give them real things they can be measured against to improve on. Maybe it's being a better team player, and here's what being a better team player looks like. Maybe it's treating our customers better, and here's what that looks like so that you can coach them to that. But ultimately, if that person's not going to be at least a good solid B, what do you got to do with that person? How many say you redeploy? Okay. How many not convinced about that? And maybe some of you aren't, but that is a philosophy that I don't see embraced by really any great leaders. I just don't see that. I don't. I'm not trying to be hard on you if you're not embracing that. I think you've got to look at more abundance philosophy, because you're keeping that person and it's driving you crazy, but you're getting results. You're keeping that person because you think that's your only option. And there's so many other options when you really expand your view and you start seeing what's out there. Now, let's look at the other one. Check out this person. High performance, or excuse me, high character, low performance. How do you describe this person? A really what? Really great person, right? They're really great. Gosh, they're great. They getting results? No, but they're nice. And this is a hard one too. I mean, unless you're like a cold, heartless person where like, screw them, get rid of them, fire them, right? This is a person that you do try and coach to see if we can increase performance in the job that we're in. What else can we do with this person before ultimately maybe having to deploy them outside of your organization? What's another thing we might be able to do with this person if they really fit into our culture well, but they can't perform in what they're doing? Yeah, way back there? Yeah, so he said, maybe find another role. And you see this all the time. And sometimes that other role might be a lateral move, or sometimes it might even be a step back into an old role they were really good at, that they really enjoyed, and then you promoted them into this supervisory role, but they're really just not enjoying it. Okay? Now, B players, obviously, we really want to retain our B players, but we want to make sure they're improving. Being a B for 5 years in a row really is not, it's not great leadership. We want to get our Bs up into the A category. And then if you look at the A's, again, it's that top 10%. It's high performance, high character. How many of you this year would like to have a lot more A players involved with your organization? And how many of you realize it's going to drive your results? Okay? Yeah. All right? And if you don't, here's what you can expect. And this is done based on salaries, so I don't know how to relate it to, what we're doing here. But I just want to give you these examples. If we have a base salary compensation under 100,000 US dollars, look what a C player's total cost is to you. It's 8 times what you're paying them. Now, how could it be 8 times your actual cash outlay to them in salary? How can they cost you 8 times as much? Maybe you lose a customer. Training cost of having to train new people that because this person didn't work out. Yeah. Exactly. See, your C players, as a leader, you've got to keep your focus on the right things. C players will bring your focus down to their job. Not that you never want to focus on their job, but it's going to bring you down to their job constantly, so you're neglecting all the other opportunities that you could be missing out on. So it's lost opportunities. It's people having to do part of their job for them because they can't do it at the A player level. Yeah. Nice, I like that. It lowers the standards and expectations of everyone else. So like, hey, he's not, of course we have these values, but he's not following it, or this person's allowed to underperform, so do performance standards really mean anything? I remember I was doing this thing for Cisco, and one of their top vice presidents, his name was Doug Dennerlein, he got up, and he was asked to speak on leadership. So I talked with him a little bit about, what he's going to talk about, and then I came up and I introduced him. And he was talking about leadership, and he told a story about a Cisco sales account, they call them account managers, but sales reps. And he said this was one of the top guys in this area of the company. And he got a call from that person's manager. And the manager said, we got a situation. And I can't remember the guy's name. He said, we got a situation with so-and-so, right? He said, all right, what is it? And Doug Dennerlein, he manages, like 10,000 people, 20,000 people. He's a huge VP at Cisco. But he said, this guy said, we have a situation. He said, what is it? He said, well, this account manager, who's one of my top guys, he really is, he's phenomenal, he's outstanding, he always hits his number. Well, he got into a little argument with his systems engineer. And the argument escalated, and he kind of has a hot head, like a lot of these salespeople do, and he punched the guy. And he said, the engineer broke his tooth and fell down, bumped his head, and he's okay, everything's all right. And I'm just curious, Doug, what should I do next? And Doug said, what do you think you should do next? Because, they have to hit their numbers at Cisco, right? And so it's an intense culture, very supportive, but intense culture. And so this guy said, well, what I think what I should do is I should talk to him, let him know he did an unexcusable thing, and then, have him go apologize to the guy and tell him if he ever does it again, he's not going to work here anymore. And guess what Doug said? Wrong answer. He said, here's what you do. You go tell that guy right now to get his things, and you be respectful, but you escort him off Cisco property, and you make sure you get HR involved, but he does not work for Cisco anymore. He said, but the guy said, why? But my number, he goes, don't worry about your number. He said, look, I have confidence in you. You're going to hit your number. As a matter of fact, you go tell your team, the remaining people on your team, you go tell them what happened and why you made this decision and that you need their help now. Give them his accounts, and you need their help now hitting this number, and that you believed enough in them that you were willing to move this person out of the organization because he wasn't right for the type of team that you guys have. And he went and he did that, and this team ended up crushing their number. Because you know what? A lot of people were underperforming because of this person. And they had lost, he didn't even think about it, they had lost a couple really good account managers because they didn't want to work with this person in the past couple years. So this person was costing him a lot of money. So what's number two? All right, number one was create a world-class culture. What's the second thing I would be looking at to see where you're going to be a year from now? What would I be looking at? Do you have A players in every role? You go, well, they're virtual. Okay. Are they virtual A players? Yeah. Do you have the best possible person in this virtual role? A lot of my business is virtual now. I used to have 30 employees, and we had lots of office space, and I'd be out traveling and speaking, then I'd come back and I'd have to manage all that and then go out and travel and speak, and it was crazy. And I finally figured it out. I said, you know what? I can go out and get the best people in the world, people that I probably couldn't even afford to hire and move to where I'm at to be in my office. I can get the best people in the world, and I'm only going to work with the best people in the world and have A players in all those roles, and I've been able to do that. And one of them is right here, this guy that brings me to Kuwait, Khalid, who I told you about earlier. All right? So that's number two. Now, third thing, what would I be looking for? It's in your books. What do you need to be? Yeah, I'd be looking at the way you communicate. Now, the ultimate goal of communication, what do you think it is? It's probably on the slide there, okay? What's the ultimate goal of communication? Okay, someone said listening. What's the ultimate goal or result of communication? Build relationships, someone said? Yeah. The ultimate goal of communication is to what? Increase Okay, that's how I want you thinking about communication. So why do I want you to be better listeners? Just because it's nice to be a listener? Being a better listener, what should that lead to? An increase in what?
Productivity.
Increase in performance. Yeah. How does listening increase performance?
Shows you care.
Okay, so by showing I care, maybe you're going to be more motivated, right? You're going to express more ideas. You're going to be more creative. Okay, yep. What's that? Less errors, which will increase performance. Also, does listening to other people's ideas, does it tend to increase your performance as a leader? What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. Okay? So the ultimate goal of communication, right, and you see organizations like Cisco say, one of our values is, one of their core values, open communication. And have any of you ever seen John Chambers speak? Has anyone ever seen him speak? If you ever get a chance, see this guy speak. He is an amazing leader. And I've been working with the company now like 9-10 years. I've had, on about 3 or 4 different occasions, I've been part of a program where he also was speaking, and I've introduced him, and it's just an amazing, amazing speaker. So they have this value of open communication, right? And here he's a billionaire, really successful guy. Great man, great values. But he'll stand in front of this audience, right, and he's talking to new hires or brand new acquisitions, people that come in through an acquisition, and he'll go walking down the aisles, right, because he really wants to get close to people. And what he'll do is he'll stop, and these are brand new hires, so how are they looking at John Chambers, right? They're like, oh my gosh, he's getting close, he's right next to me. Don't breathe, don't move, don't pass gas, right, don't do anything. And so they're really nervous, right? And he looks down at him, and he'll say, right in the middle of his talk, he'll just kind of stop, and he'll say, so, Henry, how you doing? And as I look down at your name badge, and then you say, Henry, how am I doing with this presentation? Now, what does Henry almost always say? Every time I'm there, what does Henry always say? You're doing great, really good, yep, perfect. And then he asked another question. He said, one of our values is open communication. And so he said, Henry, if I wasn't doing a great job, would you tell me? And typically, you know, the person he's talking to looks at him and goes, nope. And he said, Henry, you have to. Because if you hold it back, if you don't feel free to communicate with me, if you've got some idea of something I can do better, but you don't let me know, then I'm being cheated on the money I'm paying you, right? The organization's being cheated. We're not just hiring you to push a button or to, you know, pull a lever. We're hiring you for your ideas. We're hiring you for your creativity. And if you don't express it, if I don't know what you're thinking when I'm around you, and I'm not always going to be around you, but when I am around you, if I don't know what you're thinking, I'm cheated, right? And you're cheated, and you won't express it probably to other people that need to know your opinion. And it's really a phenomenal demonstration. And every time I hear people talk about, yeah, John Chambers came with me, and we were on this sales call, and we're meeting with this big company, and you know, right before the sales call, it's just me and him, and he's asking me, you know, how I think he needs to position Cisco in this situation. And I'm thinking, why are you asking me, right? You know, how do you think, right? But he really wants to know. And, you know, I look at people like Rich, and because last time I was with these guys, I sat in, and these guys go late at night. I mean, some of you have probably been on their sessions, but I just happened to sit in on one of their sessions where it was Mike Filsame, it was Jeff Walker, Rich, and they're in this just little meeting room somewhere in the hotel where we were in last time, and they're just sitting talking and listening, and they're saying, well, what about this? And they really were listening. Now you think about it, what do most people that rise to a high level do? They think that whose opinion, whose idea has to be voiced and is most important? Whose? Theirs. And here you had a whole group of people that literally were taking their ego, their significance, putting it aside, being true leaders for their organizations by just listening and asking questions and then asking follow-up questions on someone else's idea and not worrying about having to be significant by me talking more to you. I had a friend of mine, he was getting ready to meet with one of the presidents. I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the presidents of the United States. Maybe it was George Bush. And he's a friend and a client. He's a vice president for Wells Fargo. And he said, Tom, he goes, I'm really nervous. I'm going to go meet George Bush. And you know, I don't, what am I going to say to George Bush? I'm going to be with him like 10, 15 minutes, just he and I. And I said, you're nervous because you're focused on who? Who's he focused on? Yeah, I better look good in front of the president, right? You know, I better ask the right question. I better, you know, look impressive. I better seem smart. And I said, you've got to take your focus off yourself. And that's what leadership, a lot of it is with communication. It's taking your focus off yourself and putting it on to someone else. I said, don't worry about how you're going to look, how you're going to come across. Focus on how you can add some value or at least be interested in President Bush. And he said it was amazing when he really just took his focus off having to perform and have the answers and be this perfect person, and he just started asking questions and was really curious and interested in this other person who happened to be the President of the United States. He said he had this phenomenal conversation, and it lasted even longer because the President then became interested in who? In him. Yeah. And so that's a major, major rule. I tell people, when you're up talking to your team, when you're up doing a presentation in front of a customer, the presentation is not about who. Come on, wake up. Not about who? It's not about you. If it's about you, if I'm focused on how I'm doing right now, I'm going to get nervous. Right? I've got to focus only on you. And with communication, I mean, there's a ton we can talk about, but one thing I think is really important, and it's one of the 5 core principles even in giving a group presentation. It's the number 1 rule of communication. I went to the University of North Carolina. I played football there. I'm partial to them. But I gotta say, Mike Krzyzewski, basketball coach at Duke, who's heard of him? Phenomenal leader, phenomenal winner, and I like his rule on communication. He said the number 1 rule we have, the only rule we have on communication is when you talk to someone, you look them in the, look them in the eye. And you maintain eye contact for that conversation. And what you get is not only is it respectful and does it show confidence and certainty, but you get feedback. You get to see the facial expressions. You get to see their body give off signals to you as to doubt or concern or confidence, right? You get to see what's going on. You know the most important thing for someone giving a presentation to do, you know what it is? It's create with an audience. You don't look at an audience as like a whole mass of people. You create a series of connected conversations. You literally look at one person and you create a 5-second, 6-second, long enough to get a point conversation across. Then you go find someone else and you focus on them. And what happens is you become much more conversational and people feel like you're talking to them. I remember I was in an audience one time, 10,000 people. I had this lady come up to me and she said, Tom, really enjoyed your presentation. She said, I felt like you were talking just to me. And I'm looking at her and I'm trying to be nice, but I did have a thought go through my head like, I don't even know who you are. But because I was conversational, because I was focused on creating a conversation, everybody felt, or many people felt, like I was talking to them. When you talk to people, make sure you create a conversation where people feel free within your environment to communicate. There was this one guy, he was a political prisoner in Chile, and he was paid some ungodly sum. I read about it probably 10 years ago. I think he was paid like $70,000 or something like that. Slightly more than what Rich is paying me to be here, but $70,000 to come into board meetings. And all he would do would be to sit there and observe the board meeting and notice communication. Because he came from an environment where he was jailed for speaking up. And so his whole belief is that when organizations don't inspire different ideas and inspire even testing of the CEOs or leaders' ideas by someone expressing something different, something contrary, he said organizations get cheated. And so what he does is he'll see someone get up and say, so here's our marketing plan for the coming year, and here's how it's going to work, and we project this, and any questions? And then he'll notice everyone just kind of sitting there going, no, looks good, looks really good, nice, yep, like it, And then, but he'll look around and he'll see one guy that's kind of like fidgeting a little bit, and he'll go to that guy and he'll say, hey, excuse me, hey, you don't agree with him, do you? And the guy will go, no, I love it, right? And he'll go, I won't say his language, right, but I guess he cusses and everything. He goes, BS. He goes, I can tell. What are you? You some kind of wimp? Stand up and express your opinion. He gets paid to do this, a lot of money. How many of you like to do that job? You wimp, right? Come on. I'll take you over to the nutcracker room, right? So he gets the guy to stand up and express. He said, you tell him, I'm not going to let this meeting continue till you tell him how you really feel. And you better be honest, because I can tell by the way you communicate if you're holding back or not. And he starts creating this whole new level of conversation. Now, you can't probably hire a guy for $70,000 to do that. You've got to do that. So, what's the third thing I'm looking for, guys? In your organization, what would I be looking for? How do you communicate? How do you communicate? Are you communicating, and are you creating other people to, allowing other people to communicate in a way that inspires, increases performance? Okay? Our next key. And this is one that I first started seeing quite some time ago. But the next key, what I would look at in your business to see if you really have a sustainable, world-class business is how much focus do you have on customer thrill, customer satisfaction, and how much focus do you have on creating a really incredible environment for your team members? Now, different people have different things. Cisco is fanatical. John Chambers says the quickest way for your business to fail is to get too far away from your customer or too far away from your team members. Either one of those will cause your business to fail. And so, even though he's a busy guy and he's running this huge, big organization, he allocates 50% of his time out for him in the field with customers and with his team members. He says, if I don't do that, we're going to fail. And he makes every leader do that, actually be out with his team, with their team members. If you look at this scale, this is from Cisco's research, and really was related to customer satisfaction. But what they found was that if your customers, after buying your product or using your service, if you could get customers to be in a 4.5 to 5.0 range, they called that the zone of affection. These people will love you. They'll be extremely loyal. Other people can try and woo them away with a similar product, maybe a discount price, but they're going to stay with you. If, however, your customer satisfaction score falls down into the 4.0 to 4.5 range, still pretty good, that customer 6 times more likely to leave you. And I think that is probably true for your team members. If your team members don't really love being part of your organization, if your partners don't love working with you, then they're going to jump at other offers, or next time you need them, they might not be available. And so what do we need to do? I think we really have to have a focus on this. How many are familiar with Richard Branson, Virgin? Yeah. There's a new company that Richard's just launched that a friend of mine is the CEO of that I'm going to be doing some leadership training with. But Branson's whole philosophy, he drives customer satisfaction by creating a really phenomenal environment for all the Virgin team members. He says, if I treat them like crap and then go and tell them to take good care of the customer, what are they going to do? They're going to treat the customer the same way that they're getting treated. He says, if I create a phenomenal environment, it's not like he's overpaying them. It's just the whole environment, the atmosphere, the values, the culture. If I create an environment that makes people feel respected, if I put the right people in the right roles where they're fully engaged and they're having fun and they're really loving their work, then they're going to go out and they're going to treat customers great. That's been his philosophy. Cisco actually has a department within Cisco that's known as customer advocacy. They literally have people that work in Cisco that their only job is to make sure that you take care of the customer. And if your customer satisfaction rating starts to fall, then they come and they talk to you and they work with you to do a better job with your customer. And you know, I had a friend years ago, he regretted this decision, but he told me he was in Wang. How many remember Wang, the company Wang, right? And so Wang was going out of business, and he was one of Wang's top salespeople. He got offers, leaving Wang, he got offers to go to either 3Com or Cisco. Now, this was a long time ago. And at this point in time, a smart person that just went through a failing company would have probably gone with 3Com, because at that time it was like a $2 billion a year company. Cisco was doing like $500 million. And so he chose 3Com. But 3Com did not have the focus on customer satisfaction that Cisco did. Cisco started small, and they were very smart. They said, you know what, we can tell people, love your customer, come on, hug a customer today. You got to do it. It's part of our values. Come on, guys. Right? They said that only goes so far. You know what Cisco did? They looked at your customer satisfaction score for the year, and they said 75% of your bonus is going to be dictated by how you do in customer satisfaction. So you're going to get escalators or you get de-escalators based on that. Guess what started to happen to customer satisfaction scores? What they attached to it? Money. That's right. Well, 3Com didn't do that. Cisco now dwarfs 3Com, and my friend turned down probably about $100 million by going to 3Com. He still made some good money with 3Com, but not the kind of money he made with Cisco. All right? So you've got to be a fanatic about it. You really have to focus on this because other people will. And, you know, Jeff even said, you do one bad product. You do one product that maybe makes you a lot of money, but your customers aren't thrilled with it. Your whole business, your reputation could be gone. Talking with Rich yesterday, he said that's his biggest fear always in putting on one of these conferences is he has to overwork himself to make sure that it really is phenomenal because he's put too much time into his reputation. All right. Number 5. What's number 5 say? Yeah. I would start to look at what kind of expectations do you have for your team, and are they challenging enough? Are people clear and focused on what you want for them? And look at this chart here. So probability of success, if you can see this, goes from 0 to 100, and then you've got motivation going from low to high. Where are people most motivated? What kind of expectations or goals do people need to really have high motivation? What kind? You say achievable, but it's not like when you go 100% probability of success. That's really achievable. But look at that. In the bottom corner here, right here, 100% probability of success. Where's motivation? It's too easy. Yeah. I don't know if guys play video games, right? I got a Macintosh that had chess on it, right? And so I'm playing chess. I hadn't played chess in years, and I'm on the airplane, and I'm playing chess, and it was on like kind of a difficult one, right? And I was always getting beat. And so I moved it down. You could move this little lever down from, medium to easy. I said, I'm going to go with easy. Right? No one else will know. Put it on easy. And guess what happened? I started winning. But I won every game. And that was boring. And so I had to move the lever up again to make it interesting. So high probability or incredibly high probability of success, there's not going to be a lot of motivation. And then the other one that we have is we set sometimes these pipe dreams for people where we make these unrealistic expectations for them and we set them up to really decrease their motivation. For each role within your company, I think you as a leader, part of your goal is to figure out what does that look like where it's enough of a challenge, where it's not like a no-brainer. I mean, they are going to have to work, they're going to have to think, they're going to have to be creative, but it's enough of a challenge where, it's going to be exciting, it's going to be fun. It's going to cause them to stay up a little bit late at night, think it through. Expectations. Do your expectations, the way you think about your team members, does that determine their level of performance? What do you think? Who thinks it does? Yeah. Study after study will show you that. How teachers influence how well a student performs. There's a really interesting survey I saw, and ladies, I hope you don't find this offensive. I mean, it's an experiment, but what they did was they took 100 men, and they split them in two, so 50 and 50. And they told each of these men, and this experiment lasted over a several-month period, but they told each of these men, in this experiment, you will have to make a 10-minute phone call to a lady. And you're all going to call the same lady. And you have to have a 10-minute conversation with this lady. Now, here's what they did. This is the interesting part. They set up different expectations. So they showed a picture of the lady to each of the groups. Neither one of the pictures was an accurate picture. And so guys on this side, okay, and there's some ladies on this side too, right? But the guys on this side, what they did was they showed a picture of the lady where the lady looked like who's the hottest supermodel out now? Who would that be? Oh, you guys know. You're just not saying it. All right. So these guys know. All right. So the hottest supermodel, they said, this is who you're calling. I mean, it wasn't the real person, but it was like a really beautiful, attractive lady. This is who you're calling. Yeah. You have to have a 10-minute phone conversation with her. And your call is going to be at this time. How do you think those guys feel about that call? Huh? How do you think? They're like, man, I will not be late for that call. Right? Okay. So that's one expectation. This side, guys, you got to have a 10-minute phone call and she's really nice and everything, but here's what she looks like. And it was a very unattractive picture. And so they have a different expectation. Now, based on those expectations, are the phone calls different from this group than they are from this group? What do you think? What's this group? What are their conversations like? Fun, flirtatious, right? Can we go beyond 10 minutes? Can I get your cell phone number, right? That type of thing. What's the conversation like with these guys based on expectations? What do you think?
How long until I can get off the phone?
Yeah, is it 10 minutes yet? Not very friendly, not very warm. Now, that's one end of the conversation. And the lady didn't know, she was just told people would be calling her. But do you think, based on these people's expectations and their communication, did they influence the way the lady communicated to them? What do you think? Yeah. She was more playful. She enjoyed the conversations more. She was more engaged. Did these people, their expectations, their communication, did they influence her communication? What do you think? Yeah. And you know how they proved this in a scientific blind. They literally took recordings where you could not see the lady. They took recordings of her parts of the conversation. They played them to a group that had no awareness of this experiment, and they even said, they would do a conversation based on one of these here. They said, how do you think this person looks? Would you say she's very attractive? They said, yeah. Based on that communication, we can't see her, but she sounds really attractive. And then they would play conversations from this group, and based on the way she communicated, they say, how do you think this person looks? And people would say, when they heard her from this, not very attractive. Right? Your expectations are huge. You've got to set expectations. This is part of a role. And I want to show you something, and we can't go through this in too much detail, but I want to show you something. This is something I learned from an organization that went into Intel and turned Intel around many years ago. Intel, at that time, when these guys went in, like 15, 16, I don't know, 17 years ago, they had a reputation for being, with projects, over budget, underperforming, lots of problems. And this organization came in and literally changed Intel. And they did a lot of different things. Like one thing they did was change the way that Intel ran meetings. They said, look, you have so many meetings that don't accomplish anything. They said, from now on, before you invite him and her and him to a meeting, you've got to tell them in advance what the outcome, what the result is. Not the agenda, but you have to say, I need you to come, and I need you to be prepared to come and create this outcome. We need to make a decision, create this outcome in this meeting. And so one of the things Intel did was they said, there's no meetings without an outcome. We're never going to run a meeting without an outcome. How many of you have been to a meeting before where it's like going in one direction, going in the other, right? Frustrating. Your talents can't be used because there is no outcome. All right? So giving people specific outcomes was for meetings was one thing, but then also something called, and it's in your books, a sample yearly, or I'm calling it a sample yearly performance plan, but a performance plan. So when you bring someone into a role and you say, I need you to do this, 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 and this, how do they know if they've done a good job? Have you and they worked together to define what a great job looks like? And in this is for like a course. This is a person I actually hired at some point. But I said, here's your role. And a great performance plan has the top 3 to 7 quantifiable results this person has to produce in 1 year. It's something they know at the top of their head. If we say, what's your performance plan? You say, here's my top results I have to produce this year. Boom, boom, boom. And they say, where are you with each of those? Behind on this one, right? On track on this one, and I'm 30% ahead on the third one. You need that level of clarity in your organization to really be a great leader, okay? So giving people challenging, quantifiable results. Now, we give them great results. Number 6, what do we have to do? Okay, come on, humor me. I know you've been sitting for a while, but humor. What do we got to do? We say, here's what you need to achieve, and we're going to measure you so that you and I can have feedback. And you don't need to necessarily measure everything, but you need to measure the key core components of your business. In the book, Good to Great, they said, one of the things all these businesses figured out a way to do was identify what is the core thing we have to measure. And then make sure they measured it and had information that allowed them to be able to lead. I'm doing this thing now called the mental diet. I've talked about it, I think, the last program, writing a book on it. And so part of it is just creating the awareness in people that once you decide what you want, you've got to eliminate thoughts and emotions that keep you from seeing those opportunities, keep you from acting on those opportunities, right? Remember I said you have to leave some things behind to get to where you want to go. And then the third part of a mental diet is you have to proactively start thinking new ways. And you have to proactively start creating new feelings. Well, I talk to people about that, and they kind of get it, and they probably go and think a new thought for a little while, but then because it's not being measured, it falls by the wayside. So one of the things I started doing was I got a little tally counter, and I'm just using it for myself. So literally, I'm not counting every thought, right, because we have 60,000 thoughts. But what I do is I make sure that every day I've got minimum 100 on the plus side. So if I get kind of tired or whatever, right, I'll take one away. But then literally I'm just pumping myself by being able to measure. I know how much with the right types of thoughts that allow me to get up and speak on, 2 hours sleep, or do some report I have to write, or some new training program I have to do. You've got to measure things, and I think you guys are all on board with that, but look at the critical components in your business you have to measure. Okay? Number 7, coaching, mentoring. Huge. You're a leader. Now, it's nice. We hire an A player. We want them to ideally be this finished product, superstar. And by the way, A players, what kind of people do they tend to like to hire? A plus players. See, an A player is not afraid to hire someone better than themselves. A C player, who do they like to hire? C minus, yeah, because they want to look good. They don't want someone to be better than them. It exposes their weaknesses, and that's probably one of the reasons why they're a C player. So you've got to coach people. You've got to find people doing things right. One of the things they found in an organization I worked with, they took their top leaders, top 10%, they compared them to the bottom 20%. And they said that there's a difference in the way that these guys act and lead versus the way these guys do, which that's obvious. That's obvious. And guess what one of the differences was? Finding people doing things right. Positive communication, feedback. All right? Now, a 1-to-1 ratio would be, I see you doing something that's not great, and then I see you doing something that is great, and I communicate with you both times. What do you think the best leaders in the world, what is their ratio? What guesses do you think? 3-to-1? Someone said 7-to-1. In this particular organization, it was 4-to-1. 4-to-1. Now, most people go, how am I going to find 4 things someone's doing that good? And my answer is, you got to go look, right? They're out there, but you're not noticing a lot of things. And you've got to get that ratio up. That's the ideal ratio to increase performance, right? To coach someone is 4-to-1. We think coaching is only finding them doing something wrong and then correcting it. That's part of it. But part of it is finding them do something right, noticing it, rewarding it, right? Where everyone else sees it so that they duplicate it and where that person will do it again and again and again. That's coaching too. Okay? Reward stellar performance. Now, another thing I have here is discover motivational strategies. Who gets motivated in this room by somebody, and I know some people do, who really gets motivated when someone comes up and starts kind of kicking their butt and yelling at them, come on, you can do better than that, what's wrong with you? Anyone get motivated by that type of communication? Nobody? Okay, a couple of you do, right? Now, and most of you, that doesn't motivate you, right? How many of you it pisses you off? Yeah. Right? But guess what? We tend to think everyone else is motivated in what way? The way we are, right? And so I think, I've got to motivate my son the way that, I would motivate myself. Or I've got to motivate my copywriter the way that, I would motivate myself. You've got to start understanding people have different ways of being motivated. Some people actually like being yelled at. Not very many, but some do. Other people, though, be very different. It might be, the way to motivate this person is to, first of all, tell them all the great things they're doing in their job, build up their confidence, and then tell them an area for improvement. Understand how people like to be motivated. You can ask that question. Look, I want to coach you. I want to motivate you. How can I best motivate you? What's your strategy? What works for you? Do you want me to kick your butt, yell at you, scream? Or is that going to actually decrease your performance? I had this CEO who he's a nice guy, but he just likes to kind of, when he gets angry, he just takes it out on people, thinking that's going to increase performance, right? That's what communication does. And so I was in a meeting in his office one time, and I said, let's talk about motivational strategies. I said, let's go get someone right outside the office and find out how they're motivated. He was like, okay. And I went out, and there's this young gal, and just randomly, I said, hey, can you come in here a minute? She's like, she was scared. He said, yeah, what'd I do? Right? Oh, no. I go, no, come on in, it's okay. And she kind of came in, and she sat down, and I said, how do you like to be motivated? And she said, well, you know, I'm kind of young, and I'm just learning, so it kind of helps if somebody tells me, gives me a compliment, and then after that, I kind of like, you know, relax a little bit, and then if they can tell me, not tell me what I'm doing wrong, but tell me how I can improve, that really works for me. And I said, is that the way that you usually get coached around here? And she said, sometimes. And I said, is there ever a situation where you've gotten coaching or criticism or something that hasn't motivated you? And she got real quiet. And I said, is it because there's, and she didn't say anything. And I said, is because there's someone here in this room and she didn't say anything, right? And I said, is it the CEO? And, you know, you just see her like starting to shake. And I said, well, no, give me an example. What did he do? And she said, well, I did make this mistake. And I know I screwed up. And oh, God, I just knew I screwed up. And he came out, and he noticed it, and he really got on me. I mean, he was not really screaming loud, but he was mad, he was angry, and he let me know. And I said, so did that increase your, and he was right there, right? And you could see he was a little uncomfortable too. I said, so did that increase your performance? And she said, no. I said, what happened? She said, I don't know, for probably about 4 days I came in and I felt terrible. And it was really hard getting anything done. See, his communication, his coaching, which he thought was going to lift her up and motivate her, it was the exact opposite of what she needed, okay? Coach people to greatness. Who in here is a great coach? Who loves coaching? Okay. Who needs to love coaching? Raise your hand and say yes. Yeah, you better be a great coach. Come on, get better at it. All right, we have just a couple more. Number 8, I was going to do a little example on this, but we're running out of time. So encourage synergy. The old model was you have this department that only knows what they're doing. You've got this other, for instance, sales, and then you've got accounting or operations, and they're all kind of fighting because it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. How many have been in one of those organizations? New model, completely different. Operations, you're responsible for your key performance, but also you got to know what sales is doing, and you've got to contribute ideas, solutions for them to be able to do it better. Sales, you got to hit your numbers, but you need to know, leader of sales, what the leader of operations is doing and what their biggest goals are and challenges are, and you've got to provide resources and training and manpower, if necessary, to allow them to hit their goal. And when that starts to happen, companies really start to click. Great leaders encourage that. Okay? Last 2. Number 9. Humor me. What is number 9, class? Be decisive. Yeah, good. And you said that very decisively. Being decisive is so important. Now, how do you know? I mean, and I was talking with the CEO on the way in. I might have mentioned this yesterday. He's the head of a wireless company, $70 million in venture financing. He had another company, wireless company, that he had sold to Cisco. You know, this company is amazing what they're doing. But I told him, I said, man, I don't envy any CEO in today's day and time with the pace of change and the ways that whole industries disappear in, a year or two versus they used to be strong and thriving for 30, 40 years in the past. I said, I don't envy it. Because in anything you do, you need to be decisive. Now, where do you go? Where's a place you can go to help make decisions? What do you have built in within you that is not 100% accurate, but has a high degree of accuracy to help you be decisive? Do you know? Your conscience, okay. Your intuition. Now, what is intuition? What is intuition? You know what intuition really is? It's your subconscious part of your mind speaking to you. Remember Paul was up here and he said, your subconscious mind can actually process 10,000 bits of visual information per second. The conscious mind can only process 40. The subconscious mind can actually process way more than 10 million when you take everything else into account it's doing, processing, where your blood pressure is and how to moderate it and keep it in that level, how to make the heart beat, right? How to secrete different endorphins or endocrine, what am I trying to say? Enzymes, whatever is in there, that's working. 40 million bits of information per second. Your subconscious mind sees so many things. That's why it can give you this intuitive feeling about something, right, that is far more accurate than what you can just see with the conscious mind. And you've probably read books like Blink and different books that say people that trust their intuition, their lucky hunches, usually end up being right. I think that's a great place for leaders to go, and it usually does prove accurate. They find the luckiest people in the world, that's what they're doing. Unlucky people ignore hunches and tend to suffer the consequences. All right, we've got 9, but how many did I promise you? 10. And so, do you want one more? Yeah. Can you handle one more? Yeah. I'm not seeing it. Sit up in your seats. Come on. I'm not going to give it to you unless you really sit up and you look like you're ready for number 10. All right. Show you the money. All right. Now, number 10, and we'll finish with this, and we'll do this pretty quickly. Number 10 is I would look at you and see how much you love what you're doing versus how much you're just doing it because you heard that internet marketing or being in the business you're in is a great way to make money. Do you really love it? Who loves it? Who loves what they do? Okay? And let me ask you, do you love what you do every single minute, or sometimes is it work? Is it work? Yeah. See, a lot of people think, oh yeah, of course Bill Gates loves what he does. Give me his paycheck. Give me his, stock. I'd love it too. But you think, Bill Gates, does he have issues? Does he have problems in his business? What do you think? Oh my gosh, come on. Yeah, he makes a lot of money, but there's something that he does, there's something that every great leader does that lesser leaders never do. They do not love what they do. They're doing it for a paycheck. They're doing it because it's the only thing they think they can do. And so loving what you do is something that you've got to build inside, right? It's an attitude. It's a desire. And it's not just loving the wonderful, great things that are happening. It's loving the challenges too. As a leader, are you above the line or below the line? I'd be looking at that. Are you above or below the line? You see this line? Right? What are emotions below the line? Feeling overwhelmed, below the line. Disappointed, it didn't work out. Aw. Right? Worried. Above the line are emotions like optimism, positive expectation, passion, enthusiasm. Now let me ask you something. Does the way a leader feel just stay within that leader? Where does it go then? How many believe it spreads to everybody? Yeah. And you might go, hey, they don't know I'm worried. Right? They don't know I'm uptight. 55% of your communication is your body language. They know, they feel it, they sense it. Your tonality changes, right? They know it. Emotional intelligence says, however the leader feels, ultimately everyone else in that organization will start to feel. Whatever the leader believes, ultimately everyone else, if the leader believes it's possible, even though it looks really difficult, other people start to believe that if the leader really feels that way and believes it. You're the driver. And so we'll end with this. When you face challenges, there's 2 ways of looking at it. Level 1, face a challenge. What do most people say? Out loud. Come on. Hate it. Come on, guys. What would they say? Hate it. I hate it. Bring it on. Yeah. What leaders do is they find a way for themselves and for their entire organization, and it could be something that didn't work out right with a JV partner or a mailing or something. But when you face that, if you start losing it and if you start going below the line, your chances of recovering become very slim. If you force yourself above the line and respond, and what does level 10 say? Who can see level 10? What's it say? Everyone say that out loud. Say, I love it. All right. So we come and say, hey, you know, the conversion, our conversion rate is only this, right? What are you going to say? Yeah, now that's not very congruent, right? You're going to say, all right, I love it. Now, we're going to make it better. Because if you go, oh no, I hate it, we screwed up, aw, right? You can't accomplish anything from that. No great ideas will come from that level of looking at your work, that level of feeling or emotion. Now, I'm going to end with one last story, and then I'll get out of here. So, last conference, I think I told the story, but at the age of 3, I wish I could have my mom and my dad here like Jeff did, but my mom and dad, they both passed away. And my dad was at the age of 3, and he was killed in Vietnam in 1964, very early in the Vietnam War. And so I never really knew my dad. You know, I was 3 years old. I had a 2-year-old brother. I had a little 6-month-old brother. And my mom was an amazing role model. She passed away about 6 years ago, fairly young. But I never really knew my dad. She would tell me about my dad. My mother never remarried. But one time what I did was I went up into the attic of my mom's house, and there's this big army footlocker. And I'd always heard my dad was this really wonderful guy and that he was a great leader. But, you know, I'm young. I don't know what leadership is. And so I went up there, and I opened this thing up, and there were all these articles about my dad. And because he died early in that war, he was like the front page of the, you know, LA Times, Washington Post. Every major newspaper talked about my dad. And the way that he died, he actually was this hero that was trying to save these wounded soldiers in this battle that they had been surrounded by, you know, 5 times as many North Vietnamese soldiers, right? And so I'm reading about all this, and then I looked, and there's all these letters, and I started reading these letters of people who knew my dad. And my dad died when he was only 30 years old, so he was a pretty young guy. But all these letters talked about what a great leader he was. And I remember one letter in particular is from this person, and he wrote my mother, and he said, he goes, I apologize for writing so far after the fact, because he wrote like a couple months after my dad had passed away. And he said, I've never met you. He said, and I had to work hard to get your address, find your address, but I wanted to make sure that I wrote you a letter about your husband. He said, I didn't know your husband very long. I knew him only for about a year. But he said, your husband, out of anybody, he said, I've been in the military for 15 years. This was an enlisted person. He said, your husband had the biggest impact on me of anyone I've ever met. And so I'm really, you know, getting into this and reading, and I'm thinking it's going to be this amazing thing that he did, right? And I'm reading, and he said, you know, several things that your husband did. He said, but one thing I would just want to tell you about stands out. He said, we were in South Carolina, and we'd done this big exercise where we had, you know, all this demonstration. We had senators and VIPs coming in. And then at the end of this big demonstration where there were thousands of troops, you know, I was one of the guys that got left at the end, and the colonel told us, you know, clean up all this mess and make sure it's spick and span. I don't want to see one thing left out. And then the colonel walked away. And he said, and your husband was an officer, and all the other officers left, and they left about 10 of us, the enlisted people, to finish this job. But as everyone else left, your husband walked towards us, and he said, hey guys, let's go, let's get it done. And what he did was he started picking up the trash, and he started talking with us and finding out more about us, and he started getting us laughing, right? And we started really having a good time picking up trash. And then at the end, he said, you know, hey, you guys come with me. And he arranged a ride so we didn't have to ride back in some big old army truck. He got some vans or something, and he took us, and, you know, he bought us a drink and got us something to eat and spent another hour with us. And then he said he had to go back to his family, which I assume was you. He's talking to my mother. And he said, but that moment will stay with me forever. He said, I'll remember that to the day I too leave this earth. And it just reinforced to me at a young age how important all of you are as leaders. How important you are as leaders within your organizations and your virtual teams and making money. That's really, really important. But also how important you are as leaders in your family. As you make all this money, and as important as leaders as you are in your communities and doing good with all this wonderful money you're going to be making coming out of this seminar. You guys are leaders. You're the ones that chose to be here. You're the ones that have the resources to be here. You're the ones that have the businesses that are going to make you very, very successful. People look at you. Just like you look at Rich and Jeff and these other people, people look at you and they notice, and your children look at you, and you set the example. So the final lesson of leadership that I just want to leave with you is you are so important, not only in your organization, but people look at you in everything you do. And so I just want to challenge you to step up and be the kind of leader that you came on this planet to be. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.